Is that the motion be agreed to. The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Labor Party will oppose this motion and has no confidence in the government. The only thing missing from that speech, Mr Speaker, was the punchline, because surely that speech was an absolute joke. I'm flattered, though, Mr Key spent so much time talking about the opposition, because clearly he is quite worried about what we are proposing and the policies we're put forward. But he quite clearly has no way and no idea of the way ahead. New Zealanders actually don't want stand-up comedy. They want somebody to stand up for them. These people work hard, they pay their taxes, they bring up their kids their best they can, and who's standing up for them and who's backing them? Certainly not this government. And did you hear the words ambition or aspiration? Well, those words are not words you hear anymore from John Key. You used to, but you only really hear them at election time. What we hear now, these days, are tired, old one-liners and excuses. Excuses like the housing affordability crisis being the Auckland Council's fault. Our economic woes are the problem of, the Canterbury earthquakes. And don't forget the global financial crisis. Remember that great claim last year by John Key, that was the problem caused by the Labor government. So it's actually our fault, the global financial crisis. After 4 years, New Zealand expect more than that. After 4 years, they deserve much, much more than that. And deep down, John Key knows it. You can hear it in that slightly shriller voice. The relaxed, easy-going John Key is going. He's been replaced by the Mr. Angry, Mr. Defensive John Key. Now he's, this week, quote, putting our political opponents on notice. The government's got to move and act this year. Well, that's kind of him to give us a heads up. We've been waiting for the government to move and act for 4 years. On behalf of New Zealanders, I'd like to thank him for that. I can understand why the mood has changed, because it's all downhill from here for John Key and this government. He must be thinking, what must his legacy be? And I can see it now. At one time, this man was popular. Because there is precious little else. Let's look at John Key's record. 180,000 people have left for Australia. 1,000 people a week are going to Australia. We've got 7.3% unemployment, the highest unemployment in 14 years. 85,000 young people not in work and not in training. And above all, the worst economic growth of any government in 50 years. But I'll give him credit for one thing. At least he had the decency to fess up to dropping the ball on Sky TV last year. He said, quote, "It's been quite a strong performance from us, with a problem of one exception. The unemployment rate is just simply too high." Well, that's the epic understatement of the year. It's an epic fail from this government. Unemployment at a 14-year high, the highest since that lot were last in government. And these aren't just statistics. They are real people. They're the miners who lost their jobs at Spring Creek. They're the hillside workers made redundant by KiwiSaver. They're the teenagers, Kiwi Rail. They're the teenagers leaving school to go on the unemployment scrap heap. They're the New Zealanders that John Key and his Mr. Fix-It, Stephen Joyce, have forgotten. And talking about Mr. Joyce, the Minister of Everything. The jack of all portfolios and the master of absolutely none. His bureaucratic empire just gets bigger and bigger. The great white hope of the private sector will be best remembered for creating the great white dysfunctional whale of a bureaucracy called Moby. Now, apparently Mr Joyce has done such a bang-up job of employment that he's now the man to fix Novo Pay. Because Hekia Parada, of course, can't fix that, although she caused it. Did anyone actually know he was responsible for unemployment? Unemployment, Mr Speaker, he is the Minister of Unemployment with 7.3% unemployment. It's no wonder that he keeps quiet. The only jobs he's creating are the ones that he's creating for himself. But to be fair to Stephen Joyce, there's really only one person he wants to make unemployed, and that's Judith Collins. Because she and she alone, and she'll admit it herself, she'll tell you, can stop him from adding to the job of leader of the National Party to all the other jobs that he actually has as well. So he's doing the next best thing, which is to become the Minister for Everything. The clock, Mr Speaker, is ticking on John Key and his government. They've had their chance and they've blown it. In his first week last week, John Key finally decided that we need more apprentices. Well, I'm so glad that he accepted the complete obvious. But we have had a 20% drop in the number of apprentices since this government took office. 20% drop. So he's actually only just playing catch-up. Despite having 85,000 young people not in work, education or training, we're now having to import foreign labour. It turns out there's a skills shortage in Canterbury for the rebuild, and the government has only just realised that. I would have thought that was so obvious that even Treasury could have forecast it. It was obvious to us last election that there was actually a youth unemployment problem. That's when we announced our plan to pay employers the equivalent of the dole to take on unemployed people as apprentices. It's a plan that John Key poo-pooed. Relax, he said, we've got it all under control, the market's going to do it. It won't. It won't. We need an active, smart government. Because New Zealanders are tired of working harder and not really being able to get ahead. They're tired of scrimping and saving, not being able to buy a house despite saving hard. They're tired of a government that says the market will fix it. That just doesn't cut it anymore. We're facing a new era. We're facing an economic landscape that's changed. It's not just a blip. It's time for a new direction. It's time for a hands-on government. It's time for a government, Mr Speaker, led by Labor. And we will take on the big issue. We will make the big decisions. We'll start by putting 100,000 Kiwis into affordable homes. These are first homes. These are first homes. They're not dream homes, but they'll give Kiwis their first step on the housing ladder. Currently, it's possible to buy 3 to 4 bedroom homes in Auckland for about $430,000. The New Zealand Housing Foundation is doing that as we speak. Now, just imagine the savings that we can make when we do that on a much, much bigger scale. Building thousands of homes a year. Construction companies tell us that they can build those houses for way cheaper than they're being built at the moment. This is a hugely exciting program for New Zealand. It will be the biggest building program in 50 years. It will create thousands of jobs and boost the economy. That's what a government can achieve if it decides to be hands-on. And what's John Key got? He's got zero, nothing. He's making up the numbers to try and convince people that all of this won't work. Well, we may not be able to build an affordable house in his neighbourhood, but we can certainly build a house in his electorate for that price. He's putting the boot into first home buyers. He's taking away the little hope that they have got because he's got nothing. He's telling the council, he's telling the Auckland Council that they don't have 15,000 sections. Well, he might have wanted to listen to the radio this morning because Len Brown was actually saying, actually, we do have 15,000 sections, actually. He's telling the Auckland Council that they take too long with building consents. Well, he may want to do his homework before he does and says those sorts of things, because, guys, if you go around the country, what you find is that actually councils are delivering. And the Auckland Council is 95% compliant on building consents and resource consents. So we're making it up as we go along, but it's a great story. Let's put the boot into first home buyers. Let's give them absolutely no hope. Well, that's not good enough for me, Mr. Speaker. Labor will do something about it, and we'll do it with hands-on government. Their secret weapon on housing, their secret weapon, is to appoint the fresh-faced Nick Smith as the housing minister. No disrespect to Nick, but he's not so fresh. And neither are National's ideas. Because, Mr. Speaker, from what we heard from Mr. Key just now, National has zero ideas. Zero ideas. And now he's telling us we don't need to have zero budgets anymore. That's right. So after last year whacking up petrol taxes to get a surplus, what's changed? What's changed with this government that suddenly we don't need to be worried about zero budgets anymore? Well, clearly John Key's got a crystal ball that economists don't have. Or maybe simply he's read the writing on the wall. And he's getting out his chequebook. He's getting out his chequebook, something that he accuses us of, and he thinks by spending more, he'll become more popular. Well, it won't work. Kiwis are smarter than that, and we are going to be holding the government to account. They know National's better at spinning excuses than actually getting up and making a real difference. And we'll be holding them to account, and so are, Mr. Speaker, the rest of New Zealand. Labor is prepared to take the tough decisions on the tough issues. We will make the tough decisions. National might be happy to sit back and watch as the high Kiwi dollar kills our exporters and our manufacturers hemorrhage jobs. And what Mr. Key didn't say about Hamilton Jets yesterday, but when he asked what did he suggest they should do, he said change the government. That's what he said, Mr. Key. You missed that part out. Labor will take the tough decisions, so we'll get hands-on and change monetary policy so that our businesses can compete with the rest of the world. We'll back our risk takers and our innovators with tax breaks and research and development. We will build a smart and sustainable economy that delivers more jobs and better wages. We'll introduce a capital gains tax to encourage investment in job-creating companies rather than encourage speculation in the Auckland property market. Mr. Speaker, we are prepared to take the tough decisions. We will support looking at superannuation's age of eligibility going up so that we can afford superannuation for our younger people right now in the workforce. Because, Mr. Speaker, in 3 years' time, as John Key knows, the education budget will be smaller than the budget that we spend on superannuation. It is simply unsustainable. And, Mr. Speaker, we'll help our young people into training and jobs, something that the government has just woken up about. Too many of them are drifting and drifting and dropping out of school. So we'll make the transition from learning to earning much easier. We'll extend reading recovery and put food into low decile schools. Someone once wisely said, and I quote, "An empty stomach and an empty lunchbox sets kids up for an empty life." Actually, that was John Key in 2007. It was a great line. It was a great line. It's just that he forgot about it after he said it. Since he said it, we've actually had no change. There actually hasn't been any change. I guess it just sort of slipped at mind. But if he does get around to changing his mind and he does put it through, he will have Labor's support. We'll back good ideas if they do come from the government, and we'll work with them to improve them. John Key's answer to education, John Key's education, is to back his education minister, Hekia Parata. The woman he calls, quote, one of the smoothest communicators National has ever had. It was a smooth performance trying to cram more kids into classrooms. It was a great communication job shutting our schools down in Christchurch. She is someone who has created despair in the hearts of teachers and parents. Someone who unbelievably can make Anne Tolley look good. John Key's defence of Hekia Parata puts him squarely in the frame for her failures. Her next stuff up is his to own, because kids and their parents deserve better, and we're behind them. From education to the economy, Labor will flesh out our new direction for New Zealand in 2013. We need new policies to lift our kids out of poverty and violence. We need an economy that works for all New Zealanders, not just the few at the top. We need our environment to drive our economic success, and our economy to keep our environment clean. And we need this country to be a place that our children and grandchildren are proud to call home. We want all that. Even John Key, I believe, wants that. But he's shown he doesn't know how to get New Zealand back on track. His deputy certainly doesn't have a clue. Bill English tells us his big priority isn't jobs or growth, it's actually welfare reform. Well, here's news for him. You can reform welfare all you like, but people actually need jobs to go to. This is Bill English, who said that Labor should apologise to the nation for its time in office. So, what we should say, sorry for running 9 years of surpluses, something that this government hasn't been able to do one of yet. Sorry for paying off debt. Sorry for getting unemployment to the lowest in the Western world. It's Bill English and John Key for mismanaging the economy, letting unemployment skyrocket, and for coming up with just one answer only, selling off our best assets. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm putting Mr. Key and this government on notice. John Key's had 4 years to live up to his promise to close the gap with Australia, 5 years now to close the gap with Australia and build a brighter future, a future that he doesn't want to talk about anymore. He's had 5 years to deliver higher wages and a more competitive economy. He's had 5 years to deal with the housing affordability crisis and has done nothing. The time for excuses, Mr. Speaker, is over. In 2013, we will hold this government to account, but we'll also, sir, offer New Zealanders a real alternative. Because it's time National got out of the way and let a Labor government get on to making New Zealand a place that it really should be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Material